Well, hey everybody, welcome to Friday Night Mike and trick or treat, I guess, right? I guess it was a trick. It was a trick for Georgia. So the SEC has adjusted their schedule, and I don't think it's worked out real well for Georgia. So if you thought you were going to have Halloween weekend off, surprise, you're not. Georgia is now going to play at Kentucky on noon on Halloween. And next weekend, Georgia's going to be off. So that's the big adjustment for Georgia. This is all because Florida has kind of come to a standstill with their operations now, and the league is working to accommodate Florida under these difficult COVID circumstances. So here's the long and short of the press release, and I know you've probably read the story on Dog Nation. Kentucky at Missouri moves from October 31st to next Saturday, okay? So Kentucky, Missouri moved up a week. South Carolina at LSU stays on October 24th. Georgia, Kentucky moves from next Saturday to the following Saturday, which is Halloween. Missouri and Florida moves from October 24th to the following Saturday, which is Halloween. And Vanderbilt at Missouri moves from October 17th to December 12th. That's the built-in makeup date. And LSU in Florida now will be on December 12th, okay, moved from this weekend. So as a result of Vanderbilt in Missouri and LSU in Florida being canceled this weekend, instead of those games just moving back to the 12th and everything staying the same, these other games were shuffled around. Now, this is where Georgia fans are a little upset right now, because there's another way that the league could have done this without affecting Georgia's schedule. But had they done it this way, Florida would have been at a disadvantage against Georgia on November 7th. So Missouri and Kentucky shared the November 7th open date. What the league could have done is just move Kentucky and Missouri back a week to November 7th and had Florida and Missouri play on Halloween. And that's all they would have had to do. But had they done that, Florida would have been playing a week before they played Georgia, and Georgia would have had the bye week. So do you think the league would go out of their way to make sure they didn't put Florida at a disadvantage? I don't know. Would Georgia have to approve it for this move to happen? Did Georgia have to sign off on this? I'm not really sure. I know at the start of the year, we knew that this was a possibility, that some games could be canceled and moved around. In the end, I don't think it really hurts Georgia. I'm not ready to say it helps Georgia, because the net result, the takeaway from this, is that Florida's going to be off 2 of the 3 weeks before they play Georgia. And Georgia's going to play 2 of the 3 weeks before they play Florida. So Florida gets an extra bye week in here before the Georgia game. You know, conspiracy theory, I don't know. Make what you want of it. It's kind of a mess. I think it would have been easier if they just would have moved the Missouri-Kentucky game back a day, back a week, and then had Missouri play Florida, you know, on Halloween. But that's not the way Greg Sankey and his people did it. So I know it sounds confusing, but the end result that you need to know is both Georgia and Florida are going to play the week before they meet in Jacksonville. Georgia is still getting on the airplane and still traveling to Jacksonville for their home game. That has not changed. I suppose it's possible anything could change, but as of this time, Georgia is still getting on the airplane and flying to Jacksonville for their home game against Florida on November 7th. And next week, Georgia won't play. They'll have a bye week, and they'll play Kentucky the following week. So there you go. So there's been a lot. There's been a lot in the last 48 hours. We saw that Nick Saban had a negative test. We're wondering now, could Saban get another negative and actually be on the sidelines? This is interesting, because we thought at first, no Nick Saban, and we all talked about, well, what would that mean and how much of an advantage would it be? I can tell you when Kirby Smart talked about it, he didn't think it would be that much of an advantage. You know, he said other than deciding whether to go for it, there's really not a lot you do on game day. So I'm going to get dialed in here. I'm going to get my shares down, and then I'm going to take you inside some numbers on the Georgia-Alabama matchup tomorrow in Tuscaloosa. It's amazing the game's finally here. You know, anticlimactic is too strong of a word, but it's not the feeling that I thought I would have before this game. I'm not really sure why. Maybe because I'm that much more sure now than I was at the beginning of the year that Alabama and Georgia are going to meet again in the SEC championship game. I'm pretty confident of that. I've gone on record saying that Georgia and Alabama are going to meet again, and Georgia's going to beat Alabama in December, regardless of what happens tomorrow in Tuscaloosa. It's an interesting game, but it almost feels like an exhibition. The whole season just doesn't feel normal to me. So I'm going to go ahead and, if you'll give me a minute, I'm going to share this link to some different groups talking about Georgia, Alabama. Gosh, who doesn't want to know about this game? The two best teams in the league. I think arguably, you could make a case the two best teams in the country. Clemson looks awful good. They're untested. When will they be tested? Well, they do play Notre Dame. I believe they play Georgia Tech tomorrow in Atlanta, right? So do we think they're going to get tested by Georgia Tech? No, we don't think that. So tomorrow's game's in the spotlight, 8 p.m. game. I think it's a really interesting game. It seems to me, listening to Nick Saban earlier this week, it sounded like he was going to simplify some things for the Alabama defense. And it sounded to me like Kirby felt like he could put in more for Georgia. So if Georgia can handle it and Georgia's dialed in, this could be a really nice win for Georgia. But I don't think the Bulldogs have as much a margin for error as Alabama does. And the reason I say that is because good offensive teams can score fast and strike fast. And gosh, we've seen Georgia handle Alabama for 3 quarters, lead by 2 scores. I was convinced in 2017 and again in 2018, I was absolutely convinced Georgia was going to win those games. And you all don't need a reminder that it got away. But there's that unbelievable statistic out there that out of 120 minutes of regulation in those 2 games, Georgia has led or been tied for 118 minutes and 54 seconds. Georgia has only trailed Alabama for 1 minute and 6 of 120 minutes of the last 2 games. So it's not like, I had somebody ask me today, I did some Alabama podcast, well, what do the Georgia fans think if Kirby can't beat Nick Saban? And I said, look, there's nobody at Georgia that doesn't think Kirby can't beat Nick Saban. Everybody's watched the games, okay? Let's stop pretending that Alabama has just dominated and put some superior product on the field. They've gotten fortunate. Now, I do think that you make your own breaks, and I give Saban credit for his substitutions. But let's face it, there's been some bad luck. There's been some calls that could have gone either way in those games. That's my concern tomorrow. I think Georgia has a better football team, but I don't think the offense has evolved to the point yet where they can exploit the defense. Certainly not like Ole Miss. There's a big misnomer when people go, well, Georgia, look what Ole Miss does. Georgia can do. Well, Georgia's not Ole Miss. They don't play with tempo. And Stetson Bennett is good at what he does, but he doesn't have the skills of Matt Corral to throw the ball downfield and make the plays that Matt Corral and the Ole Miss offense made. The Ole Miss offense is better than Georgia's at this stage. At this stage, they're not a better team. They wouldn't beat Georgia, but their offense is really good. The Senior Bowl scout, former NFL scout Jim Nagy said they've got 5 or 6 NFL guys. I look at Georgia's offense right now, and they may have 5 or 6 guys, but they're very early in their careers. You lost 4 offensive starters. I think Kearis Jackson's done a great job. I did a story earlier today, and I hope you guys got a chance to read this, because I went back to when Todd Monken was talking about explosive plays, and I asked myself, where's Georgia at on this explosive play scale? Because Todd Monken wants 10 explosive. It seems like forever ago, right? There's been so many stories. Todd Monken wants 10 explosive plays a game. Well, believe it or not, they got 10 explosive plays against Tennessee, and they got 10 explosive plays against Auburn, And even though they only had 7 explosive plays against Arkansas, Stetson had 6 in just about half the game. So that would have projected to 11 or 12. So they have met that threshold that Monken talked about, wanting 10 explosive plays per game. Kearis Jackson, there's been a total of 27 explosive plays this year. So what is an explosive play? By Monken's definition, an explosive play is a 12-yard run or a 16-yard pass. Kearis has 10 of Georgia's 27 explosive plays. Next on the list, Zamir White and Kenny McIntosh have 3 each. After that, George Pickens and Trey McKitty have 2 each. And then there's 7 guys who have 1. So let me repeat that. Out of 27 explosive plays, Kearis Jackson has 10. Second on the team, Kenny McIntosh and Zamir White with 3 each. Tied for 4th on the team, George Pickens and Trey McKitty with 2 each. And then it's spread out after that. So if you're Alabama, here's the $1 million question. How does Alabama defend Georgia? Most teams have played split safety, right? 2 deep. And when you do that, you kind of give up the run a little bit. And Georgia's had some success running. Not as much as you would think, but some success. Does Alabama gamble and drop that safety down closer to the line of scrimmage to take away Kearis on the short routes or take away the back out of the backfield and take their chances with George Pickens one-on-one in the back end? I don't know. It would seem like that would force tempo. It would seem like that might lead to a higher scoring game. So much of this is going to have to do with the chess game between the coaches. Kirby said on his show, and it's one of my keys for the morning, I've got a story coming up at 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever, Kirby's 3 keys. One of them is rush the passer. That tells you what his attitude is towards Mac. He's not going to sit back there and cover. George is going to try to get after the Alabama quarterback. He doesn't think that he can beat Alabama with coverage. He is going to pressure them. He thinks if you give Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith enough time that they will get open. So how will Georgia go about getting pressure? Will they need to blitz to get pressure, or can they get pressure with a 4-man rush against this experienced, big Alabama offensive line? You know, you can look at any breakdown you want. You can look at any statistic you want. But at the end of the day, it always comes back to the line of scrimmage, doesn't it? And I think that's going to be the case in this game as well. So I did another statistical comparison, and I thought this was interesting. I compared last year's Georgia offense to this year's Georgia offense. And it's apples to apples because all the SEC teams are playing SEC schedule this year. Last year, they were playing, 4 non-conference games. And some played a bowl. So this is where Georgia ranks in the SEC this year versus last year. And this is where you need to note, offensive numbers are up significantly in the SEC. So more important to pay attention to how are you faring relative to the other teams than the raw numbers. Scoring offense. Last year's Georgia team ranked 4th in the SEC. This year's Georgia offense, 5th in the SEC. Total offense. Last year's Georgia team, 5th in the SEC. This year's Georgia offense, 7th. Passing offense, last year 5th, this year 8th. Pass efficiency, last year 4th, this year 5th. Rushing offense, this year's better in rushing offense relative to the rest of the SEC. They're 4th in rushing offense right now, 5th last year. Third down efficiency, last year 4th in the league, this year 7th in the league. And here's the big one. This is the one to remember for the Alabama game. Red zone efficiency. Last year's Georgia offense, 2nd in the league. 54 out of 57 times in the red zone they scored. This year's Georgia offense, 9th in the league, 11 out of 14. So what does that mean? That means that Georgia could go 43 for 43 in the red zone in the next 10 weeks, and they'd only tie last year's team. Last year's team was more efficient and more effective than we remembered. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I was talking to my friend at Florida. I called him up, Edgar Thompson of Orlando, before I did the show. I said, listen, I'm going to talk to the Georgia fans. Give me some juice, man. He goes, I'll tell you what, Mike. He said, if you believe that Alabama has a chance to beat Georgia tomorrow, and I do, then he says he thinks Florida's got a chance. I said, no, Edgar, they don't. They really don't. He goes, no, listen. He said, Florida is scoring on 70% of their drives. 70% of the time Florida takes possession, they either score a touchdown or they get a field goal. I said, well, that's pretty impressive. Alabama is scoring on 73% of their drives. 73% of the time that Alabama gets the football, they either kick a field goal or get a touchdown. Georgia is scoring on 56% of their drives. Now, here's a really telling statistic for you. Another number to think about. We'll throw Florida in there. They're scoring touchdowns on 53% of their drives. Alabama scores touchdowns on 67% of their drives. 2 out of 3 times they get the ball, they score touchdowns. Georgia is scoring touchdowns on 33% of their drives, 1 out of 3. Alabama has scored twice as many touchdowns on their drives as Georgia in efficiency. Now, what we know is that Georgia has slam dunk the best defense in the country. Hands down, no question about it. Nobody's as good as Georgia. Nobody can touch Georgia. How much do they affect Alabama? Do they force 3 and outs and put their offense back on the field enough to get the points that they need? Or can Alabama generate enough offense to flip the field? I mean, it's a really fascinating game, and I think it could go either way. I think it's a complete coin flip. And I called the coaches, some of the coaches I look up to, I called Gene Stallings and asked him about it. I like to check in on Coach Stallings and talk a little football, and he likes to ask me how Coach Goff is doing. Him and Ray Goff are very close. He thinks a lot of Ray Goff, and so we talked about Coach Goff and how things are going in Athens. And Coach Stallings couldn't really give me an example of a time that either he or Coach Bryant missed a game. We're talking about dynamic figures missing a game. So, you got to go apples to apples. And Stallings and Bryant were dynamic figures. I called Steve Spurrier, and Spurrier did have a story. In 1988, and first of all, Spurrier said he didn't know which way it would go. He said it could go either way with Nick Saban or without Nick Saban. He didn't have a good feel on the game. And you know that Steve Spurrier will tell you what's on his mind. But he told me a story about 1988 when he was at Duke. And apparently there was a bad call in a game between North Carolina State and Duke. And he said it cost Duke the game, and it cost Duke what would have been their first bowl appearance in 26 years. So he went off on the officials after the game, and he got suspended for the next Duke game. And they were playing North Carolina. And Duke won without him, 35-28. And I thought, wow, if Duke can win without Spurrier, and think about how involved Spurrier is in the play calling. Some of the data I got, and just listening to Kirby, I've got a story up right now. Kirby basically says he doesn't think if Saban's not there, it's that big of a deal. He says other than just going for it, deciding whether you go for it on 4th down, the hay's in the barn. And listen, Kirby knows, because Kirby coached with Spurrier. He knows his game day routine, right? So I thought that was really interesting that Kirby Smart would downplay, really almost sidestep, not even, like he doesn't want to be distracted by this Nick Saban drama that's playing. And I think it's brilliant. When the players came in for interviews on Wednesday night, Kenny McIntosh and Kearis Jackson, neither one of them knew anything about what was going on with Saban and the supposedly positive test. Who knows if it was a false positive or not. But they didn't know anything about it, and they didn't want to talk about it. And I really admired Kenny and Kearis, because there were other reporters that kept asking him over and over, well, it's the breaking story. I want you to comment. And they said, no, we're focused on Georgia. They said, we're focused on Georgia. They don't want to talk about Alabama. Kirby's got them mentally locked in. That was telltale to me. You're not going to talk some Georgia player into talking about what he doesn't want to talk about. These guys are better than that. And I admired him. I respect him. I said, well, good for you. Don't let these guys bully you into questions. Who cares what Kearis Jackson and Kenny McIntosh think about Nick Saban? They're not coaching against them. They need to know their assignment. So good for them. So Kirby hadn't told him. And I'll guarantee you that he's not in Tuscaloosa holding a team meeting going, guys, I just got the news about Nick Saban. Or, guys, Kentucky. Look, they're looking at their phones. They know that their Halloween weekend at home isn't going to happen. Now, they get it, but that's all right. They're going to be off this week. And you know how kids think. It's all about now. Yeah, now. More right now. Yeah, but you missed later. Who cares about later? So it's not going to be a distraction for Georgia. It absolutely will not play a role in tomorrow's game. These guys are focused. I think they're excited about the opportunity to play on the lighted stage in front of the CBS national audience. Game day is going to be there. You know what? It's so much stuff going on. It's almost like game day is going to be there like, well, of course it is. What else isn't happening, right? I mean, there's so many storylines generated. And as I've told the Alabama people, when they've called me up, and I've done a lot of radio. I've done Huntsville. I'll do Mobile tomorrow. I do Birmingham every week. I did a podcast in Mobile. I did a couple Sirius XM. I do an ESPN one every Wednesday morning. I did one this afternoon. They all want to know about Joe. And I said, here's the storyline. A fourth-string former walk-on quarterback is going to Alabama to take down the Crimson Tide. What does it say about Alabama football if Georgia's fourth-string former walk-on quarterback can beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa? How sweet is that if you're Georgia? Not your one, not your two, not your three, not transfer one, not transfer two. The 5'9" redshirt junior who was such an afterthought that Kirby wasn't even giving him first or second team reps the first half of practice this fall. Think about that. If Georgia goes in there and wins with Stetson Bennett, first of all, everybody's dressing up as Stetson Bennett for Halloween, right? Everybody, right? You got to get your mailman, whether he wins or loses tomorrow, Stetson Bennett has got to be the #1 Georgia fan Halloween costume. You got to get the black wig, right, with the curly hair and the mailman hat. And a jersey, and a Georgia jersey, and a football, and you're Stetson Bennett. Got to be the #1 Halloween costume. If you're a Georgia fan, you've got to go as the mailman. Because he has been, to me, one of the most miraculous stories that I've covered in my career. It's everybody's dream. Let's be a guy's dream. I'm going to be the guy that walks on. I'm going to be the small guy that makes it. I'm going to be the one that finds a way. And you say, well, maybe you would be that good, but you're never going to get a chance. Stetson Bennett was never going to get a chance. It took so many different things to happen for Stetson to get his chance. And then it took Stetson making the most of it. And he has. He has. Stetson has given you all he's got. He's prepared. He makes good decisions. He's quick on his feet. He's got good mobility. He's gutsy. He's out there running and diving for pylons. Man, Stetson Bennett is a legend right now. He beat Auburn and Tennessee, 2 ranked teams. This is amazing. Stetson Bennett will leave Georgia, hopefully with a business degree. Because if he's a financial advisor, we're all going to give him money and tell him to invest it, right? This guy is unbelievable. I mean, it's just a great story. So if Stetson is able to beat Alabama, what does that do to Alabama? Hey, Alabama, guess who just beat you? You just lost to a guy that nobody wanted out of junior college other than Louisiana Lafayette. You just lost to a guy that had no offers from any SEC schools. And he just came into your stadium and he beat you. I'll tell you, that could get the Alabama defensive coordinator fired. I mean, think about it. Guys, you just lost to a former walk-on. You just lost to a former fourth-stringer. I mean, you want to talk about putting Alabama fans over the edge? They think about that storyline and their head explodes. And they're so fearful that it could happen because Ole Miss put 48 on them and like 637 yards. So they're all going, oh. And they're thinking, boy, they need Mac and they need Jalen and they need Devontae and they need Najee. They need their players, those first-round skill guys. I think those are all first-round picks. They need those guys to step up and perform. But they can't do it if the offensive line doesn't get a push. Kirby said this last night on his coach's show about Tennessee. He said he thought they got tired. He said he thought they wore out. I said, oh my goodness, do I do a headline on this? Nah, let the Tennessee people alone. They saw what happened. Tennessee's line was supposed to be all that, and they weren't all that, all right? They folded. Cade Mays looked bad, okay? Cade looked bad. He didn't even look to be in good shape to me. I don't think in the end, and I guess this is the epilogue maybe for Cade Mays as far as Georgia's concerned with him losing the game. I don't think that was a good move for Cade professionally. I don't think he'll be better off as a professional moving back to Knoxville. I think there will be more distractions, and I think there was a higher standard here, and I would take Matt Luke over Will Friend as an offensive line coach, honestly. And no offense to Will Friend, I think he does a good job, but I think Matt Luke is a very, very good coach. And I think Cade probably cost himself professionally by making that move back home. That's my final takeaway on the Cade Mays deal. So what needs to happen for Georgia to win tomorrow? The biggest thing is turnovers. Stetson Bennett has not thrown an interception yet, okay? But he's been close. And he needs to take very good care of the football tomorrow. Can't have any turnovers. Here's a stat that's going to scare you a little bit. It's not a pretty one. Georgia needs a better start. And I was kind of surprised by this because I think a lot of Todd Monken. I think Todd Monken and his system is a big reason why the Georgia offense has been effective. I give Stetson credit for playing his role, but let's be honest. From a skill standpoint, he's not at the top of the heap. He does make good decisions and gets rid of the ball quickly, and he studies and knows his playbook and things like that. But Georgia has had 6 possessions either at the start of games or at the start of the second half. And they have given up more points on offense, 7 with that bad snap, than they have scored 2 field goals, right? And one of those field goals came via turnover when the offense went backwards. The offense has gone backwards on 3 of those 6 drives. It hasn't been good. Georgia's opening possession of games and opening possession of second half have been poor. They've had 1 legit scoring drive. They went something like 67 yards for a field goal. That's it. That's it. No touchdowns to open the game. That needs to change in Tuscaloosa. Now, do I think the Alabama defense is on par with Arkansas? Yes. Do I think it's on par with Auburn? I think it's better. Do I think it's on par with Tennessee? Yes, I do. Probably a little bit better. I think that this is the best defense they've played. Even though they've had their issues, Ole Miss plays football on roller skates with that hurry up. I don't even think it's football. I've been saying all week, I think it's garbage. Kirby called it sloppy, and I'm taking it from there. It reminds me of when we played backyard football, and there'd be a play, and you'd run to the ball and snap it real fast while your little sister was still on the ground and throw it over her head. And she'd go, wait a minute, I wasn't ready. Oh, well, too bad. Let guys get ready. This isn't football, man. This is garbage. I don't like what I see with these rules. They push the envelope too far, just like that targeting call. I'm still upset about Richard LeCount getting ejected from the Auburn game for a shoulder pad to shoulder pad hit. I know what it looked like in real speed, but the slow-mo showed Richard going with the shoulder pad, the receiver dropping down. Richard couldn't have gotten any lower. There was nothing he could have done other than not attempt to tackle. I understand you want to protect the players. Do you know how they used to protect the players? This is just too much common sense, I guess. You didn't throw the ball over the middle when your guy was about to get hit. That's how you protect the players. You put the responsibility and accountability on the coaches, not the referees, not the defensive players that are breaking their backs trying not to hit people the wrong way. Now you're seeing more ligament and shoulder. Wow, geez, I wonder why we're having all these knee and shoulder injuries. Because everybody's breaking their backs trying to go lower than they really should. It's very difficult to do a form test. It really is hard because you don't know what the offensive player, in that split second. And I'll tell you this, and you guys that played ball, you know this. Think about when you had to, and I was the high school running back. Listen, my thought when I'm running, boom, I'm lowering my head. You watch television, you watch these ball carriers, and before they go down, they're dropping the shoulder. And with the shoulder comes the helmet. And they're not trying to spear you. I didn't want to lead with my head, but that was part of the wedge I was creating when I would drop my shoulder. My helmet was a part of that wedge, right? That was my contact. I had a neck roll, and you can see I still got too big of a neck. Got some nice people that like to make fun of me for that. It is kind of a big neck. There's not much I can do. I'm just going to tell you. I do exercise, but I have a big neck. I think it was from all those Oklahoma, those neck drills we would do in wrestling practice when you'd roll over and arch your back and you'd be on your toes and the top of your head, which if I did it now, I'd probably break my back. But anyway, bottom line is this. Really hard to hit a ball carrier who's dropping their shoulder and their helmet without you also dropping your shoulder and your helmet. It's just an impossible collision. So those are just a couple of little things that bother me about the rules right now. But getting back to the game, it's going to be a chess match. It's going to be, does Alabama drop the safety and sell out to stop the run and challenge Stetson Bennett to go over the top and find George Pickens? We haven't talked about George Pickens, have we? Not the water bottle incident. George had a moment. I get it. I've been the guy in the back of class when it wasn't a very exciting teacher. I could be disruptive myself in the day, so I kind of understand where George is coming from. He's bored. He's bored. George Pickens is bored. You've got to keep a guy like George Pickens involved in the game plan. George has 15 targets this year. He's got 8 catches. 8 catches. That's all he has. You got to get him in the ball more. Why don't you get him the ball more? Well, because George is a perimeter receiver. And 2 things are happening here. One, defenses, as I said, are keeping that second safety back to make sure that they're shading George. They're not giving him any room to breathe back there. They don't want to get beat by the big play, and they know George Pickens can make it. So Stetson's going underneath more to the slot guy. Kiera, short routes, running backs, slot guy. I had a target chart. I don't know what I've done with it, but I've studied it closely, and that's what's happening. They're throwing a lot to the running backs and the slot guys. The slot guys have gotten, I want to say, almost twice as many targets as the perimeter receivers. So Stetson is throwing it in that little bubble around the line of scrimmage. He's throwing it within 20 yards of the line of scrimmage for the most part. There's only been 2 pass plays longer than 30 yards. When we say this is not an explosive offense, that's what we mean. This is not a catch-up offense. I think Georgia needs to get ahead. I think that's really important. They need to play with the lead. I don't think they would be as effective playing from behind. I don't think Georgia's a good come-from-behind team right now with where they're at with this offense. So get ahead. They need to put pressure on Mac. I'm going to trust Kirby on that one. I wasn't really sure how Georgia would approach that, but what that tells me is Kirby's going to send pressure. Saban has identified Azeez Ojulari and Adam Anderson as 2 guys that he's concerned with. Saban, and the other thing Georgia needs to do is run the ball. Saban is concerned with time of possession. He brought that up on the SEC teleconference the other day. He brought it up. He was not asked. I asked the question, what is it about the Georgia offense that concerns you? And he used a lot of words like effective, okay? He didn't say they were dynamic, but he said they're effective at this, they're efficient at that. And then he said, and then this was interesting because he kind of turned the question around in his mind, as these genius people do. They look at things 3-dimensionally, right? They don't just look at it for what it is. They view it from all different angles before they come up with their perception. And Nick Saban is football genius, as is Kirby Smart. And so Nick turned the question around midstream and said, now, if you had asked me what they don't do well, I would have a hard time coming up with anything. So between listening to the way Saban put it, and he concluded, by the way, that they hold the ball for 34 and a half minutes. He goes, they do blah, 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 and that's why they hold the ball for 34 and a half minutes, which leads the SEC. So that was his conclusion, was they're just pretty good at a lot of different things. Now, talking to people at Tennessee after they saw them, I asked Jeremy Pruitt, what would you do different if you could play Georgia again defensively? And he felt like they had a good plan and they just didn't execute it as well as they needed to. But talking with other people at Tennessee, they feel like Georgia's pretty good everywhere, but they feel like that Stetson Bennett's going to get pressed. They feel like Stetson is going to be challenged. That's why I get back to that story. If Stetson Bennett wins this game, he will have earned it, because he's not playing with house money anymore. And it's not a case of people not knowing what he could do. And it's not a case of coordinators not knowing what this offense is. They are going to have Georgia scouted better than Tennessee and Auburn did. Nick Saban has had a chance to see how Kevin Steele and Jeremy Pruitt, two of the best defensive minds in football, have schemed against Georgia. And they're going to be able to adjust off of that. Another thing to consider, after playing Ole Miss in that speed, Georgia's offense is going to look slower. Now, here's the question, though. Can Alabama tackle? Are they good enough to tackle Kenny McIntosh or Zamir White or Kendall Milton in the flats when it's that linebacker and that Georgia running back one-on-one? Can the Georgia running back get through the second level and make that big play? Can he turn that 3-yard gain into an 11-yard gain? Will the receivers block downfield and create an opportunity for what would be the first rushing score of more than 30 yards dating back almost a year to the Kentucky game last year when Swift ripped one off? They've not had an explosive run in 10 or 11 games now at Georgia, explosive touchdown run of more than 30 yards, right? It's been a long time. You need better downfield blocking for that to happen. Can that happen, right? Can they cover Kearis Jackson even with the extra guy down there? How dynamic is Kearis? How much of this is air raid principle and Kearis running to open space versus Kearis beating people? He's going to get more attention now. He has to. He's had an incredible start to the year. He's been Georgia's breakout player. When you look at the statistics and you look at the performance and what a great story he is. Speaking of guys that have validated themselves, as a freshman, he had a pulled hamstring. Last year, he started against Vanderbilt and injured his wrist. Everybody's talking so much about Demetrius Robertson, they ignored that Kearis Jackson actually won the job. And now here he is now. He's a team captain. He's a leader in the receivers room. He's a budding star. Now, you need to marry George Pickens with Kearis Jackson and Trey McKitty. Trey McKitty's big. Alabama has struggled against tight ends. If you go back and look, I want to say the Ole Miss tight end had like 150-some yards on 8 catches, something ridiculous. And even if you go back to the opener, Missouri's tight end, Texas A&M's tight end had 7 or 8 catches. So Alabama has been susceptible in the middle of the field and with the hurry-up offense. Now, Georgia doesn't do much with tempo. At least they haven't showed us that. But they have been able to exploit the middle of the field. So this is going to be interesting. Can you get the ball to McKitty in the middle of the field? Can you get the ball to Kearis on the slant? Can you incorporate George Pickens in you? You have to find a way to get George involved. Find a way to get George involved. Maybe it's an end around. Maybe it's a shovel pass. Maybe you move George inside to the slot. Maybe George just, runs a hook and you throw it out to him in the flats. Maybe you do some things with formations this week. I've heard talk that Georgia may use some formations to try to get George involved. Diamond formations, right? Where you put, a guy at the line of scrimmage, 2 guys behind him, and you throw it, there's already 3 guys out in front of him. Now, there's some DBs out there too. You got equal numbers, but it gives George a chance to do something with the ball in his hands. So I look for George Pickens to be more involved tomorrow. I look for Trey McKitty to be very involved tomorrow. I look for Kenny McIntosh to get the most touches he's had all year. I don't know that he'll start. I think they may still start Zamir because he's been the guy that started the last 4 games. I think everybody knows how hard he's worked. But I think you're going to see more McIntosh, and I think you're going to see more Milton. I don't know how you could not be impressed with Kendall Milton right now. That run that he had, that 11-yard run he had against Tennessee is one of the best runs I've seen in a while. I counted. There were 9 different Tennessee guys that hit Kendall before he went down. The guy made a great cutback on a 7-yard run when it seemed like there was nothing there. The Auburn game was what really popped my attention when the D tackle came up to hit him and he bounced off him. This 285-pound guy hit Milton and bounced off him, and I said, okay, this kid has got some kind of Kevlar. There's something special about this guy's armor. And I wondered, remember, that was a guy that I questioned. I said, I don't know how good high school football is in Northern California. Where Kendall Milton, you have answered that question about being physical enough. I have seen it for myself. Now, I still have questions about his ability to catch the ball, and I still have questions about his top-end speed. But if you're running over people like that, with those kind of cutbacks, you don't need the top-end speed. I covered Travis Henry for 3 years at Tennessee, and he didn't show me any top-end speed until his final game when he went for an 80-yard touchdown, just to put it in my face because I kept talking about it for 3 years. If Milton can rip off 5 to 7 yards a chunk, who cares who he can beat in a 100-yard dash? I don't care. Typically, I like a home run hitter back there, and I know Kirby wants explosives too. And that's why Swift was such a beautiful running back for Georgia, because DeAndre could cut and catch and hit the home run, right? I think Georgia needs a home run back. I think Kenny McIntosh is the home run back. We saw the 65-yard touchdown run against Arkansas State. I know there were some critics that said, well, that's Arkansas State. Well, you know what? They got fast guys there too. The reason they're Arkansas State isn't because they don't have fast, small guys. It's because they don't have the big guys in the trenches or the big skill position quarterback that can throw the ball 70 yards on the fly. And oh, by the way, Kirby Smart says, now tell me if you believe this. He says Jalen Carter can throw the football more than 60 yards. He says Jalen Carter, I mean, he talked about what a tremendous athlete, and I know we're all excited because we saw a big number 88 catch that pass in the goal line package there in the second half. It is cool. I kind of wondered why they didn't run that fullback leak into the flats before. Used to see that play a lot when the fullback's the lead blocker, and you know that backer that ends brace to hit him, and then you think the guy just missed you, but actually he's going out for the pass, and before you know it, oh my gosh, he's got 3 steps on me, and the quarterback's just throwing an easy pass. But he got excited talking about Jalen's athleticism for a minute. You know, he talked about his basketball and his ability to catch the ball and play fullback, running back. But then he goes, but we got to get him better at tackle. He said he's not fundamentally or technically sound. And Kirby started talking about, you know, he almost caught himself like, yeah, it sure is fun to talk about Jalen Carter as a running back, but he's at Georgia to play defensive tackle and he needs to get better technically, was what Kirby said. So Kirby was very relaxed. It was good to hear him in that mood. He was fun. He talked about Ben Cleveland, said he was a gentle giant. Said he's got to lean on Ben to get mean. I thought that was interesting. So let's see if gentle Ben shows up at Alabama, or if it's that guy that Kirby says he's got to put his thumb on to get fired up. So that's going to be interesting, you know, because Kirby said, you know, you got to. Kirby's still upset, by the way, about not getting that yard on 4th down or that goal line stand at Tennessee. He's still ticked. And he kind of went at Cleveland for that. You know, you got to be able to get that push for that foot. You know, he was still, that's something to keep an eye on. You know, Georgia's going to solve that goal line package. Remember, last year that was a problem at the start of the year. I wrote about it, and Swift stepped up and handled it. Swift stepped up and handled those short yardage situations. It was a problem in 2018. Justin Fields was the most effective 3rd and 4th and short guy in the quarterback sneak. They were having issues with it then. So this has been something that for whatever reason, with all the size and power of Georgia, their 4th and short and 3rd and short packages have not been effective sporadically. So there's a lot for Georgia to improve on. But you know what? There's a lot that Alabama's got to get better at. Alabama's defense has got just as many problems as Georgia's offense does. So you kind of look at strength on strength, great Georgia defense, great Alabama offense, and then you go, you know, I guess weakness on weakness, Alabama defense and an inconsistent Georgia offense. And, you know, so that's why to me, I'll go back to my keys. Who's going to score first? Score first, right? Play from ahead. And 2, turnovers. That's it. Turnovers. So let's take a look at some of your comments, guys. It's been such a crazy, crazy week. So many storylines. Got a story tomorrow. Matt Stafford. We had Matt Stafford talking about the 2007 game. That's tomorrow. Stafford had some really fun things to say. As you might remember, it was Stafford that beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa in overtime, 26-23. Zach Dempsey says, what? Zach, I can't see your complete comment there. What do you think about the Bennett Cook option, like what Ole Miss did? What do I think about the Bennett Cook option? No, I don't like that. I'm not a fan. You know, option is something that I believe requires a lot of practice. And I think you're asking for trouble. When you start playing left-handed and you start running plays that you haven't run all year, you know, you're not going to execute them with the same efficiency is if you practice them over and over and over and over, right? So I'm not a fan of putting in gadget option plays because I've seen them backfire as much as I've seen them be successful. Bad pitches, timing, just requires a lot. That's probably something Ole Miss had worked on. So, from a philosophical standpoint, yes. But in practice on a short week, if you haven't worked on it in the off season, I wouldn't be trying too many new things. I don't think Kenny Milton will start. I think there's a chance I don't think Kendall Milton will start. I think there's a chance that Kenny McIntosh starts, but I think because of Zamir's experience, he might also start. Either Zamir or Kenny. Who knows? Maybe James Cook. James is back. I didn't think James played well at Arkansas. In fact, he didn't play well at Arkansas. He dropped 2 passes and he fumbled. Cook did. Then, he was doing well against Auburn. I want to say, 5 carries and 41 yards, running hard, really jamming it in there, really showing me that hunger and that physicality that you expect from a Georgia back. But he left the game with a bad shoulder. So if Cook is back, is he really back all the way 100% run through the tackles back? Or is he back like DeAndre Swift was back against LSU, where it was only catch the ball and run outside? So I'm not really sure where Cook's at. I need to see that. Some other injuries. You guys saw this. Monty Rice seen in a protective walking boot outside of Butts-Mehre Heritage Hall. My antennas kind of went up Tuesday. Monty was supposed to come in there for interviews and didn't. And that kind of surprised me a little bit. You go, well, is he just skipping the media? No, he was probably getting treatment. Tuesday is Georgia's day to go really hard. I would guess that Monty suffered a mild injury in the Tuesday best on best drills. They probably put him in that boot as a precaution. The good news is, with Monty being a third-year starter and a senior, he can get the mental reps that he needs to be ready without practicing. More good news is Quay Walker gets more work. Quay's 6'4", 240. And if we're being honest about it, the way Alabama's able to spread the field a little bit, I'm not really sure how much, nickel and dime Georgia's going to be anyway. This may be more of a game for Nakobe Dean. I thought Nakobe's been playing great, lights out football. I do think Georgia needs Monty. My sources tell me that Monty's probably going to play, just so you know. It's a game time decision, but what I'm hearing is that he will probably play, but we won't know until he warms up for the game and sees how. That Monty's going to do everything he can to be out there. What else we got here? Paul Baker predicts you'll see JT Daniels if Betson's not able to get it. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if JT's been getting the reps with the 1s and the 2s that you would need to be ready for a game like this. I think at this point, you're kind of with Stetson ride or die at this point. I think this is a Stetson Bennett game. I think Stetson has earned this game. I don't think you want to throw JT in there without the proper preparation in the middle of a game and just say, okay, catch up, even though you haven't had a snap all year. One benefit of Georgia being off next week is I do think it's another week that JT could be ready, for October 31st or November 7th. Ultimately, I still believe JT will be the guy. And that's not an insult to Stetson Bennett. It's just a reality that JT was running first team, at the start of fall drills for a reason. This guy can sling it. I saw 30 minutes of practice, and I'm going to tell you, there's not a throw that JT Daniels cannot make. Now, he does not have Stetson mobility. He does not have that. You would lose that mobility that Stetson gives you, but he's got everything else. I mean, he's the real deal. One of the Alabama coaches told me once Daniels gets on the field, they're not losing again. How does Tennessee know that? Because they were dying for him. Because they were begging for JT Daniels. Begging for JT Daniels at Tennessee. Begging for JT Daniels at Michigan. Begging for JT Daniels at Washington. And talking about guys on the bench, it does seem like a disservice to the starter. I had somebody ask me today, how's JT Daniels going to be the quarterback if Georgia doesn't lose? And I said the same way anybody is. When Georgia recruits players, they don't say, you know what, we'll give you a chance to play and to win a starting position when we lose a game. They say we're going to compete every week. And when Kirby says that, he means it. When he says there's competition every week at every position, he's not just talking. So, Stetson's got a chance to keep the job, and he's getting better, and he's learning more of Todd Monken's system. But give Stetson credit for what he's done. If you missed the start of the show, I've already told everybody. You got to be Stetson Bennett for Halloween this year. You got to get the mailman hat and the black wig and the Georgia jersey and the football and maybe even a pouch of Red Man. I don't know. Somebody told me they saw him dipping tobacco on the sideline. I'm not one to judge. I did plenty of that myself when I was in the military. I shouldn't have. I'm not proud of it. It's a horrible habit. But when you're in the military, when you're playing sports, you're in the country, it just kind of comes. It shouldn't. Flush that topic. Let's pretend we even ain't talk about it. Don't put it with your Halloween costume. That would only upset people and be a bad example. Go with the jersey, the mailman hat, the football, the black wig. Be Stetson Bennett for Halloween. This kid has captured our imaginations, and there's got to be there's got to be something done on him. A book, a movie. His story's not done yet either. If he goes to Alabama and beats the Crimson Tide, just think how upset those Alabama fans will be. Well, we didn't have Nick Saban. Well, Georgia didn't have the first, second, or third string quarterback out there. I mean, they got a guy that nobody else wanted. Alabama, you could have had him. He played right over there at Jones Junior College in Mississippi, right in your backyard. You could have had Stetson Bennett. You didn't want him. So he came back to Georgia and beat you. Now that's a story. That's the story that I can't wait to write. So I'll have that kind of dialed up. And I got the other story dialed up, which this isn't a sexy narrative, but I just don't think tomorrow's game matters for Georgia as much as it does Alabama. I think Alabama has to win this game because I think Alabama is at their peak. There's not going to be any better than Mac at quarterback. There's not going to be any better than Najee at running back. There's not going to be any better than Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith at receiver. There's nobody else that's going to evolve. This offensive line isn't getting any better. But Georgia is going to get better every single week. More players will emerge. Those young receivers, they'll stop making those penalties. Jermaine Burton will stop jumping off sides and holding. And you'll see more 43-yard runs from him, right? Kenny McIntosh will get more opportunities. You'll see him break one for 60. He's third in the nation in kick returns right now, over 40, right? Kendall Milton will get more work and run over more people and hurt more linebackers. Trey McKitty will evolve. Darnell Washington will continue to get better. The quarterback situation will only get better as all of these quarterbacks get more repetitions with Todd Monken. And the defense won't drop off because they're deep everywhere. Georgia is going to be a team that gets better and better and better and better and better and better. And if they beat Alabama tomorrow, Alabama won't touch them in the SEC title game. It'll be one of them blowout SEC title games. It'll be one of those 21, 24, 27. If Alabama wins tomorrow, doesn't mean a thing. Doesn't mean a thing. Georgia's not losing again, okay? This is the only game, the only time. If you're going to get Georgia, you better get them tomorrow in Tuscaloosa. You're not getting them the rest of the year, especially now that they got next week off. Just letting you know, right? So that's why for me, I don't feel a lot of apprehension about the game because I'm sitting back going, we'll see these guys play again on December 19th. That's just my attitude towards it. I don't mean to be laissez-faire, but that's how I feel. I mean, I'm 80% sure that we're going to see Georgia and Alabama again December 19th. As much as the league accommodates Florida and they made Florida, Tennessee the last game and, Florida doesn't play back-to-back road game, it doesn't matter. I don't see the Florida Gators. Did you see the way they played defense or not played defense on A&M on that last drive? They played 3 guys rushing and 8 guys in pass defense. They played not to lose. A&M played to win. And Kellen Mond and A&M shoved it right up the Gators' tails and won that football. That was an embarrassing loss for Florida. That's a problem. Florida has got a 5-alarm fire on defense right now with Grantham that they've got to put out. In addition to this COVID distraction. Say this for Georgia and Kirby Smart in his program, and Ron Corson and Greg McGarity. Haven't they done a great job managing COVID-19? I think they've done a sensational job. You look around the league and all these games are getting canceled and all this social distancing is, people are losing their discipline on it. Georgia's done a great job with it. it's a little frightening because you knock on wood because it seems like it's popping up everywhere. I don't know what science you're reading now. I don't even want to throw my 10-cent science philosophy about the type of RNA that's reproducing and spreading and not being as deadly. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm a sports writer. It does seem like there's a proliferation of this once again. Everybody's ready to just let it go and say the heck with it. Don't say the heck with it. Don't let it go. Stay safe. Be smart. That's what Georgia football is doing. There's a reason for that. A lot of discipline over there in Butts-Mehre Heritage Hall. A lot of buy-in from the Georgia Bulldogs. Go back to your questions here before we cut it loose tonight. John Adams with a great question. Is there a chance the SEC game gets backed up another week? Wow. It's already December 19th. Now, I made the point last night on our cover 4 that in hindsight, I'll bet you that the SEC wishes they would have played an 8-game schedule and started on September 26th, where they would have had more bye weeks, right, to play with, especially now that you see the Big Ten is only playing an 8-game schedule, which if they miss a game, they'll just punt it. And they can get away with that because the way they set up their conference championship game isn't by divisions. It's 1 versus 2, 3 versus 4, 5 versus 6, etc. Because the SEC has stayed with divisions, they need to have more integrity in finishing out the schedule to assure a balance. So that's why I said they probably wish they would have had an 8-game schedule and still started September 26th. But I think John's got a great point here. I do think that's possible. I do. I think that is possible that they would need to back it up another week. Now, then the real question becomes, is there a chance they could back up the national championship game? Which is currently scheduled for what, January 11th? Is that right? Let me take a look here. I'm not sure. Did I make reservations down there? I don't think I did. Typically we have last year we have our sports writers banquet the day of the national title game, and I was able to award Herschel Walker with the first ever Freshman Legend Award in New Orleans, where he did his magic in the Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame, and Herschel and his wife were there, and I just can't tell you what great ambassadors these folks are. He did interviews with me that day. I don't know if you saw the video, but he's just such a polite man. And, Georgia fans should be so proud of Herschel, the way he carries himself and the dignity and the class. Such an articulate guy, the valedictorian of his high school. I mean, I can't get enough of the Herschel Walker story. You guys know that. Herschel won me over when I met him, and really started to research deeper what he was all about as a football player. January 11th. So the real question becomes, is there any chance that they move the championship game back? I suppose if they move back conference championship games a week, and would they play it on December 26th? Would you do that to your student athletes? To me, I maybe on second thought they couldn't. It's almost like you'd have to move it back 2 weeks, right, to January. Think what that would do to the whole bowl system. I don't even know where the bowl system's at. It's kind of like we're making up the rules as we go along. John, that's a great question. The more and the deeper I think about it, I don't have the answer for you. I wish I did. I don't think so. Right now, I'm going to say that I don't think so. I think that December 19th has got to be the drop dead, just because of where the championship game's scheduled, the New Year's Six game. There's so many other things that circulate around those dates. I think it would create too much of a logjam. Marshall Hughes is right. One game at a time, Marshall. Thank you. Absolutely right. Baker says, you're right. If we lose tomorrow, see the same team twice in a season. That's what I think so. I think so. I get what Rodney's saying. Georgia fans are sick of Alabama fans talking. Listen, if Georgia wins tomorrow, that's fine. I think Georgia can win twice. Again, Georgia's going to get better. If root for Georgia to win. Don't root for them to lose. Don't think you got to lose this to win in December. It doesn't matter what happens tomorrow. Georgia's going to beat Alabama in December. If you win tomorrow, you got bragging rights. And again, the Stetson Bennett legend is just incredible. I mean, the kid's already a legend, and I admire everything he's done. I'm so happy for him. A guy that stayed in the program this long. It's just, look at Shelton Tucker calling out, saying that God doesn't like Nick Saban. Good grief, if you talk to the people in Alabama, it's the same person. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want to make light of that. But Saban's incredible. Listen, Saban has won 27 straight games against SEC East teams going all the way back to when Steve Spurrier beat him in 2010. That was the first time South Carolina had ever beat a number one team. Steve Spurrier, 2010, beat Nick Saban. So that's 27 in a row. Nick Saban has never lost an Alabama home game in the month of October. How about that? 45-2 in the month of October. Both of those losses on the road. Nick Saban has never lost a home game in the month of October. Nick Saban's next victory will give him 86 top 25 wins. That will tie him with Joe Paterno for the most by any coach in history. Saban is an amazing coach. Whether you like him or you don't like him, his numbers are hard to argue. Kirby was a big part of Nick Saban, right? Kirby was Mr. Spock to Captain Kirk there. You know, Kirby was his defensive coordinator for 8 years. In those 8 years that Kirby was the Alabama defensive coordinator for Saban, they won 4 titles. There's been 5 seasons that Nick has played without Kirby as his defensive coordinator. He's won 1 title. That's how valuable Kirby Smart was to helping build the Alabama program. So just like right now, make no mistake about it, Dan Lanning is huge to Kirby Smart. Dan Lanning is dynamite. Dan Lanning is the next SEC head coach. If Gus loses his job, South Carolina will look at Dan Lanning. Auburn would look at Dan Lanning. Mississippi State could look at Dan Lanning. Who else could fire a coach that would? Dan Lanning is in line for a Power 5 job. I'm telling you, this guy is on fire right now. He's got so much respect from his players. They play for him. I mean, you can just sense it. You see Lanning, you watch Lanning, you see him interact, you see him as a recruiter. You say, I want to hire that guy. I want to hire Dan Lanning. He's gone. Year or 2. Tops. You hope Matt Luke sticks around for a couple years. I think Matt's going to get another opportunity. Don't know when. But you hope You hope Monken sticks around. Monken is doing some great things right now conceptually. Quarterbacks love him. He's going to build some NFL quarterbacks here. How long can Georgia keep him? Hopefully he's a guy that sticks around 2 or 3 years. Someone's asking me, am I giving up on Coach Lees? Yes, I am. I thought it was a terrible hire. I don't think he fits the culture. I know the quarterback's there. Do you realize they had 6 interceptions? Do you realize Mississippi State got shut out by Kentucky? They got a safety. I mean, you hear what I'm saying? This ain't going to go well. It's not going to go well. It's not funny the jokes aren't funny when you're losing. Yes, I think Mike Leach was a bad hire. Corey Redding brings up a point. Corey, I didn't want to say this because I don't want to sound like a whiner, okay? But one of the reasons why I picked Alabama to win was because I think they're going to get the whistle. And I hate to say that. Because it's like the game hasn't even started, but I'll tell you what, I've been having these flashbacks to when I covered Michigan State I covered State from 12 to 2016. And Michigan State was good. They had 3 straight top 10 teams. They got destroyed by Alabama, but they beat some really good teams. They beat a good Baylor team. They beat Notre Dame. They beat Michigan. In 2013, Michigan State beat every Big Ten team by double digits, including Urban Meyer and Ohio State. They were a good team, but their quarterback got hurt in the end. But when they played Notre Dame that season, there were at least, no exaggeration, 4 phantom pass interference calls. Horrible calls. Michigan State had a great defense, but that pass interference is such a judgment call, and I believe Alabama's going to get the call. I think they're going to get the whistle. That's one thing. And the other thing I worry about is I feel like Georgia's been fortunate not to turn the ball over very much. And I don't want to say good fortune or luck, but sooner or later they get you. The numbers even out. But I could be completely wrong. If Georgia goes in and wins by 4 touchdowns tomorrow, I wouldn't be shocked. I'm just telling you, I would not be shocked because Georgia's outplayed Alabama the last 2 times they played them. Should have won both of those games. I was at both of them. I still can't believe that they didn't win the SEC championship game in 2018. I just can't. It's mystifying. If Georgia wins by 4 touchdowns tomorrow, I'm not surprised. Listen, really, truly, nothing would surprise me. A shootout, a low-scoring game, it's all on the table. You know, we're supposed to be experts. Okay, sometimes you get a feel on things. Yeah, I had a pretty good feel on Auburn. Yeah, I had a great feeling on what was going to happen on Tennessee. But this one, I'm numb. I'm not gonna BS you. You know, if Alabama wins, it was a lucky guess. If I would have picked Georgia, it'd have been a lucky guess. That's how even this game is. The circumstances are so fluid, especially now that Saban's not coaching or is coaching. You see what I'm saying? I mean, how do you, it's like trying to do a math equation without all the numbers in front of you. You know, there's certain amounts of algebra that you can do without having all the parts of the algebraic equation, right? Based on formula of whatever, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And if you give me 2 of the principles, I can finish out the third. Are they even called principles? That's how bad my mathematics are. I don't even know if they're called principles. But if you give me 2 of the 3 parts of that equation, I can figure out the third, right? We've got like 1 part of 100 tomorrow. No, actually, we got more than that. We know that there's a great offense and a great defense. We know there's 2 great coaches. We know that Georgia's going to have a special teams ed with Scott Cochran. No doubt about that. You know you have the best punter in the country in Jake Camarda. You know you went from rod to the pod, and the pod is 7 for 8 with a 47 and a 51. And I've never been to St. Simon's Island, but when I go, I'm looking for the sign that recognizes it as the hometown of the pod, because that's what Kirby called him. And I said, you know what? When you're a walk-on and the head coach gives you a nickname, you must be pretty good. So when Kirby called him Pod, I realized that he might beat out the scholarship kicker for the job because he's got a nickname, right? If you got a nickname at something, you got to be pretty good, all right? Everybody got a nickname. Do you got a nickname? Then you must be pretty good at what you do, right? So there's certain things we know, but the intangibles, Stetson Bennett under the lights, how Alabama chooses to play defense, who Georgia hands the ball off to, what skill position players do they get involved, who gets the early break, who gets the first turnover, who scores first. These intangibles all matter in a game like this. I'm a little concerned that Kirby was talking about putting more on the guys this week because they were more receptive, versus Nick saying he was going to shrink it down and make it more simple. In a game of this magnitude, I like simple, typically. We'll see. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting. I hope you guys enjoy. Was Zeus missing the hole against Tennessee? Chandler Johnson wants to know. Listen, Zamir White is in his own head right now. It's paralysis by analysis. Let me tell you, this kid wants it so bad. This kid wants it so bad that I'm convinced he's trying too hard. He's pressing. And the best thing that could happen for Zamir is to take a step back, take a deep breath, let Kenny and Milton do their thing. But Zamir needs to take a step back and just refresh. Hit the refresh button. Running back is an instinctual position. You've got to trust your instincts. You've got to trust your vision. You can have somewhat of a predisposed notion of what's going to happen on the play based on the front and where the blocking schemes are at. You can sort of anticipate, but ultimately, you've got to be the one to decide when to plant your foot and when to bounce it outside. One of the worst things I've ever seen, I was at Tennessee, and I'm not going to tell you which coach it was, but it was a running back, Corey, I can't remember Corey's last name. He was from Auburn. And there was a running backs coach, and they were running a play, and the kid would take the handoff and run, and the running back coach would yell, "Cut now!" And the running back would cut when the don't ever, please, don't ever do that to a running back. It was sad. I said, what is this guy doing? You don't tell a running back how to run. You don't tell an artist how to paint. The guy's painting, stop right there and give me some green. What? I'm painting a picture. Running back is art. It is the most beautiful art form in football. The running back is the most beautiful art form in football. Who do you compare yourself to? I'm an artist. I'm a running back. I don't compare myself to anybody. That's like asking a singer who he sings like. Now, you may notice some similarities. Oh, you know what? Gale Sayers used to cut like that. Boy, Earl Campbell used to drop the helmet. We still haven't found anybody to compare to Herschel, if you're being honest. Even Gurley wasn't Herschel. I'm just going to say Herschel was a machine. I'm not going to have this conversation. But the running back is an artist. And Zamir needs to go back to painting his own pictures. And stop thinking so much, Zamir. Just relax and be you, man. He's trying so hard. That's what's wrong. He's trying so hard. That's all. So chill, refresh, give yourself time. You've got plenty of time left in your career. I think we're going to see better from Zamir White, but he may need a little break right now. McIntosh is on top of it. He's hot. Milton's got confidence right now. He's hot. Kyrus Jackson is on fire. Trey McKitty came here for a game like this tomorrow. Over under, Trey McKitty, 5 catches, 75 yards and a touchdown. Remember I said that. I gave you that early buy-in in that stock report, week 1 stock report. I gave you Jalen Carter is my early buy-in alert. And what happened? Jalen Carter scored a touchdown. This week's early buy-in alert is Trey McKitty. 5 catches, 75 yards, and a touchdown for Trey McKitty. That's what I got for you. Shelton's having some fun, 31-0. That's not going to happen. Chandler wants to know about the starting line. I'm guessing Jamari Salyer, certainly Trey Hill at center. Still, I believe Ben Cleveland at right guard. McClendon at right tackle. Schaefer at left guard. I think that's what you're going to see. Yeah, I like what Mark Franklin says, going with a hot hand. I agree with John Adams. I like to know Sean Marino. Kenneth Wiggins thinks Burton has a good game. Maybe. I hope Matt Landers can get back. Matt came out of that game. I'm just going to tell you, Matt had a really good camp, and I know Georgia fans have given up on him, but I think Matt Landers is a guy that by the end of the year we're going to be talking about. Shelton says the point spread's dropped to 3.5. That tells me that everybody's betting on what Georgia right now. Is that why? So they're going to keep dropping the points. Mark Franklin's right. He'll get it right. Have patience. Just remember, though, have fun with the game tomorrow. If you're a Georgia fan, I want you to have fun with the game tomorrow. Don't worry about the result. Think about December. Think big picture. Look for positive things moving forward. Look for young players that are evolving. This is going to be an invaluable experience for all these guys. And if Stetson Bennett wins it, he's a legend. He's a legend, and doesn't matter how tall he is, doesn't matter how hard he throws the ball. If he beats Alabama, you all better dress up as Stetson Bennett for Halloween. I'm just going to tell you that. So everybody have a great Friday night. You can rewind and get the crazy scenario with the scheduling. If you missed the start of the show, Georgia now off next week. We'll play Kentucky on Halloween at noon. I'm calling it a night. I'm going to bed. It's been a long day, okay? And we got a long one tomorrow. So have a great Friday night, and I'll talk to you at halftime of tomorrow's game. We'll see you. Bye.